Good evening. My name is Ben Halfon, and I am the co-author of Our Happy Divorce, How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together. It has been a while since we've been on this live stream, but we're back, and we have a great topic tonight, reparenting after divorce. Unfortunately, we are not all together again. Some of us have decided to stay on vacation, Nikki and Susan, but we do have our other co-host, who happens to be the best divorce coach in the industry and the host of the award-winning Divorce Survival Podcast, the one and only Kate Anthony. There you go, Kate.
I love you. Hi, everybody.
How was your live stream OHD summer break?
Yeah, it really was. It was a total break. And the band took a break. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I wasn't seeing any of my friends. It was a real kind of bummer.
The band didn't play?
We took like a 3-week break from the band too, because people were like traveling, and which is weird, but we did. We traveled a little bit. My mom and Emmett and I rented a cabin up in the mountains for a weekend. So we were
What mountains?
The San Bernardino Mountains. Big Bear.
Hey, it's not home, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Although we got out of there as quickly as possible because it wasn't home. It was kind of trashy. So
really?
Ew. Oh. Yeah, it was kind of a fail.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. We don't have Susan. We don't have Nikki, but we're going to hold down the fort. And I'm super excited about the topic tonight. It's something I haven't paid much attention to or focused on because it really isn't part of Nikki and my story. So I met our guest tonight in a workshop we both attended, and we started talking about divorce. She started talking about divorce, and I was falling asleep in the workshop, but all of a sudden my ears perked up. So I sent her a message in the Zoom chat privately and said we should talk. A few days later, we had the conversation, and I just told her she had to join this live stream because I was impressed. Because, like I said, it wasn't something that I dealt with or really thought about that much, and that is after the divorce and all the emotions and what you do with it and how you get it back on track. So our guest tonight is Sheva Ganz. She helps single parents find creative solutions to the challenges of divorce and single parenting. She's expressive. She uses expressive arts, art therapist. She's an expressive arts therapist. I don't know. We'll have to ask her about that. But she's a single parent coach and the founder of A Creative Life, providing counseling, workshops, and courses that teach life-challenging skills. After going through her own divorce with 3 children, she's passionate about teaching single parents how to be present, purposeful, and playful parents. So without further ado, welcome, Sheva Ganz. Hi.
Hi. Hey. Thanks for coming and talking here.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm really looking forward to getting deep into this stuff. It's my favorite topic.
So tell us about you first and your personal experience around divorce and what led you to do what you do.
I am a single mom to 3 kids, and I've been divorced for roughly 7-8 years. I don't know. You lose track after a while. I'm almost divorced as long as I was married, which is so crazy because they're such distinct, separate lives. And then it's like, wow, my marriage was so long ago. And I had a relatively average divorce, the usual, and it lasted around 1.5 years just with all the legalities. And it was pretty difficult and very, very emotionally draining. And my kids were pretty young at the time. And after I was finished, I stepped back, and when life resumed, when the chaos and the drama of it kind of subsided, and it was almost like war torn when you got to take stock now what, I realized a lot about what I had been missing in terms of my tools of being a present parent and how to parent when going through such an emotionally trying situation, and acknowledging the mistakes that I made and still make to this day. When you're on your own and when things get so overwhelming, parenting as a single parent is different than parenting in a 2-parent home. It just is. There's so much on you at one time, and it's not something we necessarily know how to do naturally. That, added with all the other stresses of life, can make it really, really challenging for somebody just to figure out how to manage that themselves. And on top of that, you want to be present for your kids. So I looked back at my own experience and I felt, oh, there was a lot I could have done better. And I learned from my experience. I have a degree in counseling, and I kind of just combined my own personal experiences and my trainings and my education. And I decided this was my passion career, just combining all those elements and using the tools that I found to be helpful and the tools that I'm still refining to this day, and helping parents with those tools. And what Ben and I were talking about before is that a lot of people seek coaching or counseling when they're in middle of it. You know, they're going through the divorce. I know, Kate, you work with people like, should I stay or should I go, right? They're in right that crux of the decision. And I call that the drowning stage. And you can't exercise while you're drowning. You know, you're just in survival mode. And what the work that I'd like to do is, after you're done, after you can take a breath, now look and see what really you can change and what got you into this situation and what patterns got you here, and taking really a look at your life and your childhood and your present life and your projected future, and deciding, making conscious choice about how you want your life to go forward. And that happens after, not in middle of the divorce, because there's too much going on.
So with your own divorce, we had talked, and it was something that, you know, Nikki and we sort of took the opposite route. We sort of tried to clean it up before we went through the emotional process, but yours was quite different, right? In the sense that it wasn't, you were hurting at the end of the divorce. I mean, everybody's hurting, but you guys weren't getting along very well at the end of the divorce?
I mean, at the end, when we signed, we were both just tired of the conflict, and we were both like, you're good, I'm good, we're good. And we have a very, very good working relationship now, which we both work on. But it was, and I think I told you, Ben, it's like walking in a minefield, right? Every couple starts off thinking, we are going to be that couple that has this perfect, amicable divorce. We're going to be that one. We just are not. We're not compatible right now. We're going to go our separate ways. I mean, like 80% of couples probably start off that way. And then it's honestly a minefield. You step on one mine and it blows up, and there's no backtracking, because everybody runs for cover, and it's a matter of safety, and they feel like they're being targeted, and there's so much fear going on, and no one knows who to trust, and do you have my best interest or your best interest? So everybody just runs for cover. And that's what happened in our situation, where there was a mine, it got stepped on, and there was no going back. And then it just was it was a year or so process of getting to that place, of getting to the end zone, which was the divorce. And then I think once it was finalized, then there's no more uncertainty. And when the uncertainty's over, then a rational mind can come back into place.
So one thing that I found fascinating about your situation is that you had to fight. You had two obstacles, really. You know, one thing is an ex-husband in the divorce process, or a husband trying to get divorced. But then you also had the religious side of it too, right? And that was something that, again, that I was found so fascinating, because it wasn't my experience, but it added a whole new wrinkle into already really complicated ordeal.
It does. And in the Orthodox Jewish world, the man, I don't even know how to say this politically correct, right?
Because it's not.
Right.
Well, the way of the doctrine is that he has the power, really, to give or not give the divorce. And it can become, and it often does become, a tool for extortion, power, revenge, leverage, and it's honestly, I've lived it, I've experienced it, and I can see the other side. Like, I can understand. Imagine being given such a power card and being asked not to use it, because they have the power card. And in a situation where everybody's so scared for their own rights and their own safety and their own needs, when you give men this opportunity to say, like, I can hold this as leverage to get what I want or what I feel is right, it's hard to resist for a lot of men. And for the most part, husbands usually give it at the end when everything's wrapped up and the leverage doesn't hold any weight anymore. But there are quite a few incredibly unfortunate situations where women are stuck. They're stuck. They can't remarry, and these men are holding on for vengeance or power, manipulation, and they're just stuck in these marriages for 20 years. And if you're religious and if you believe in the system, then you have no choice. And I call it almost like a Stockholm syndrome, because you're religious, you believe in God, you want to be in the community, but at the same time, it's your religion that's holding you hostage. And it's you love it. It really is this crazy concept of Stockholm syndrome in religion, because you love it, you want to be a part of it, but it's also holding you in this marriage that's not a marriage. You haven't lived with this man in 20, 30 years, and you're still technically married, and you can't remarry or date or anything like that. That's considered an affair. It's it's black and white.
Yeah, you can get the divorce can go through legally, right? Like the legal channels. But if you don't get the get, then you're all bets are off. Then under the eyes of the religion and the eyes of God, you're still married.
So if you're not religious and you don't care, you're good to go. But if you are religious, and especially if you have children and they're in religious schools and you want to live that life, then you are married for all intents and purposes. You can have never seen your husband for 20 years. You are married. And any relationship you have is a full-blown affair in this context.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
It's really interesting what you were saying. Ben's like, what?
I mean, I don't really know how to I probably should just not say anything right now, because I could just get, blow up the whole Our Happy Divorce and my wonderful image.
Nikki's going to be texting you. Yeah. I think it's really interesting because, I think it's interesting what you were saying, Sheva, about the fact that you give men this power, and some men are, kind of cool with it, and some men will abuse it. But the very idea that there is a power play, that they have the power, whether they use it, abuse it, or anything, the fact that they actually hold it, I think, is so destructive to women and so demeaning. And because, again, like, here we are, we're property, right? No matter what anyone thinks about it, or no matter how generous and kind a man may be in not wielding it, he still has it, right?
So it was actually, I don't remember all the details of the history, but it's ostensibly set up to actually protect the woman, because men would leave their wives when they wanted to, when it worked in their favor, but it backfired. I don't know if that's really accurate or not, but it potentially had roots in helping protect women, because their marriage and their attachment to someone who can provide was pretty much we're talking way back hundreds of years ago, that was their survival was dependent on having a man and having a marriage.
Right. And not so long ago, and currently in a lot of like Hasidic communities, right? So that's sort of, I think that's right, that it was set up to protect them, to protect women, that like your man can't, like,
interesting. In the turn of the century, so when people started immigrating to America and leaving Europe, so many men were like, bye. They just bailed. They're like, we're going to the New World and we'll definitely send for you. And they just bailed. They came and they just started new lives. There was a section in the Yiddish newspaper called The Missing Husbands. And it was like a section. It was like they were ghosted. This was the beginning of ghosting. And they would just abandon their families back home and start these new lives here. And it was so common. There was an entire section in the newspaper devoted to, do you know this man and where is he? And he's abandoned his family back home. Isn't that wild?
Wow.
And he's actually married.
actually married, and they just used it as an opportunity to just start anew and leave the old behind.
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
so let me ask you a question.
Ben.
What? No, I'm not touching it. I'm just I'm abstaining from any comments. Mark down the time and date for this one. But just one question on are you once you've gotten that permission or the get, are you allowed now to remarry in the temple in the Jewish religion?
Totally.
Okay.
Judaism completely supports the concept of divorce. Very much so. It's just this tiny little issue that gets in the way.
Literally gets in the way.
It's not cheap, right? It's not cheap to get a get.
It's not expensive.
It's not terribly expensive, but I remember I have a friend who would scrimped and saved to process his divorce and just pay for the the online stuff. And then he was like, and now I have to, get another $800 or something for this get.
$800 is a little high. Somebody was like ripping him off a little bit, but it's like $600. So yeah, it's additional. But if it's really an issue, there are many people in the community that would step in. People do recognize that some men use that as an excuse. I don't have the money, and I can't do it. And then people usually do step in.
So in fairness, if the woman, the man doesn't give the get, is that?
Yeah,
okay.
It is. Give the get.
But if the man goes out and has an affair or remarries, even though he's not legally married, is there a double standard there, or is he?
There is a double standard because, according to biblical law, a man is technically allowed to have 2 wives. Like, think of the forefathers. Abraham, Jacob had a couple of wives. So biblically, it was allowed, and it got changed somewhere along the way where it wasn't acceptable culturally and socially. But it's not one of the tenets of our foundational Bible truths. So it's not as big of a deal for a man to do that than for a woman. And it's easier for men to get exemptions. It's very complicated, and it's wild how crazy the power dynamic is in this situation.
Well,
it's a very big issue.
Yeah, and we didn't bring you on here it's just a fascinating, thing that one of the reasons that I'm a recovering Jew. But I was in the business for my bar mitzvah and then got out. But you are obviously in the field and fighting the fight. It's just in a different space. And so some of the things that when you see a couple, or do you work primarily with women or men or both or couples?
So both, and not usually in couples because it's usually post-divorce.
Okay.
But I have consciously not targeted my work to only women, because I do believe that there's a lot of value, especially when I do courses or workshops or webinars, that there's both, so often the opposite sex gets demonized. Men are always narcissists. That's number one. And women are always, greedy. I don't know. I'm not sure what the women always are. And I feel like if I were to create programming only around one gender, that story, that belief gets amplified. Right. But when you have other perspective, and it's not your trigger, it's not your ex, then it can be like, oh, okay, I can maybe see how my ex can see it from that perspective, and it opens up an ability to be more empathetic. That's for me personally why I enjoy working with both sides.
So what are some of the tools of the trade? I mean, I think after the more layers that get piled on of the negativity and everything that goes on divorce. We've all been divorced. So we know the fruit salad of emotions that go with it.
It's easy. Nothing.
What's that?
Yeah, it's like breathe.
Oh yeah, no, easy. So when somebody comes to you, either male or female, what is the, they've gone through the process, they held on to some of the past that haven't really cleaned it up. How do you handle that?
So I like to call it reparenting, and for me, this reparenting is twofold. One, it's reparenting yourself, and I'll definitely get into that. And the other is reparenting your children, because there is a brokenness that happens. Your family life broke, but it doesn't have to stay broken. and everything needs to be readdressed. If your house got physically knocked down, you would rebuild. So if your home gets metaphorically broken, it requires readdressing your relationship with your kids. Something has shifted, and it is a certain element of reparenting. It's not the same. So that's that two-sided aspect of reparenting ourselves and looking for and understanding what our needs are, and reparenting to our children and looking for and understanding what their new needs are, because things have changed for them. And their experiences in the divorce are different than your experiences.
So with, I mean, sort of the secret sauce of, our happy divorce is that it took two to make it, and it took two to ruin the marriage, and then take two to our post divorce life. But how do you deal with just one, or is it just the focus of the one parent, and regardless of the other parent does, or do both people need to be on the same track to reparent?
It's really nice when everybody plays nicely together, but I like to say you cannot play catch if the other side is not catching the ball. And it really does take one person to turn things around. And if one person can be the bigger person and just drop the ball, then if somebody's lobbing balls at you and it takes a while for them to notice that you're not catching and throwing them back, eventually the game's not fun. But I truly do believe that one person can shift. And there are situations that you will, I just heard this somewhere. I thought it was so funny. Your ex knows how to
push your buttons,
pick your triggers because he installed them or she installed them, right? So there always will be those circumstances where you're super triggered, you have a history. But I do believe, and my secret sauce is knowing what your needs are. And I believe that we have 4 basic needs. And when you understand what your needs are and the recognition that's what other people's needs are, you can understand a situation with a lot more empathy. Somebody's not trying to hurt you. Your ex is not trying to hurt you. They are hurting themselves. Hurt people, right? So, and if you can recognize that most of our hurt and most of our anger comes from an unmet need, you can recognize that in somebody else. And that makes it so much easier to relate to somebody with compassion. And I remember I had the incredible good fortune to meet a coach in my divorce who would just say, lead with love, not fear. Lead with love, not fear. And I was like a baby. Like, she needed to hold my hand because I was programmed to fight back. Like, I'm going to send this email and I'm going to instigate it or not instigate or respond in kind. Like, you want to get in there. You're so angry and hurt. And I would call her and I'd say, like, I got this email. How should I respond? Like, she really held my hand. And it worked. It really worked. And it influenced me so much. And that's such a big part of, don't worry, like, don't leave. Everyone's always so scared if they lead with love, what they're going to lose. And there's so much more to gain when you lead with love and have compassion. And I know that it's hard. I have lived it. It's not an easy thing to say, but I speak with truth. I've tried to do it, and I've been successful sometimes and I've failed sometimes. But her mantra has definitely been in my head of love, not fear. And I think that's really important for people who are going through a divorce and following. If you have children, you're still in a relationship. It's just a redesigned relationship. And that's also reparenting, how to reparent with your ex. So you have to learn how to communicate.
Really quick, I didn't mention before, but anybody who's watching the stream or viewing, you have a question, feel free to just drop it in the comment box. You have, 2 of the best coaches around, a therapist and a coach. They will be glad to answer your questions. This reparenting deal. Now, were you a therapist in doing this, the arts and the yoga and all the other art therapies? Art therapy. What's the word?
Therapies.
Art therapies. Before, or is this something that happened after?
No, it happened after. Okay. It was definitely my projection. My BA was in art therapy, but it was. I went back to school right before my divorce, so it was kind of happening simultaneously, and it was amazing. It like the perfect time. It's like, it was a very experiential school. So like we would learn about group therapy and we would sit in group therapy together. And I was going through a divorce. So you can imagine what that was like for everybody. Helpful for me. I guess I gave them a lot of practice.
That's right. I'm sure you did.
Kate, do you notice any similarities between, I mean, I know you have your sort of different pools, if you will, but you know, anything she said that sort of you coach to?
Oh yeah, I mean the certainly the work that I do help people while they're drowning go through figuring out like how they got here. I mean, we've talked about this, like how they got here, how they made this choice, because I think the only way that you can, especially in my should I stay or should I go clients, if you're trying to figure out if you should stay or go, you have got to do the work on yourself to figure out how you got here and how you made this choice. Because, you know, if it's your wounding and it's your past and your triggers and you clean your stuff up and you find yourself realizing that it was maybe more you than him, you know, that's going to be great. And if not, if you get really clear on what's yours and you can clean that up and get rid of the resentments and get out of blame and like really do all the inventory work before you end the marriage, you're going to go into your divorce so much better healed and more processed. Yeah. So that to avoid all of this, you know, horrible, you know, stuff that we talk about. And I also work with my clients a lot on, you know, the same thing, like not do like you know, we always talk about, Ben, that, you know, Al-Anon set the tone. And that was always a thing that I didn't get when I was like early in program. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Al-Anon set the tone. Right. Like he's being an asshole. How, you know, and yet you know, you can set the tone. You can, no matter like, you know, exactly what Sheva was saying, no matter what he's lobbing at you, you can just be like, you cannot respond. Don't pick up what he's putting down. Mm-hmm. And I help my clients craft these emails in response, like you're talking about, Sheva, that are, you know, if not loving, at least kind and graceful. I always talk to my clients about keeping their side of the street squeaky clean. You do not need to stoop to their level. You do not need to, you know, throw back what they're throwing at you. If they throw, you know, a tomato in your face, you clean your face and then you get back to the narrative that we actually are talking about, which is, you know, can I get an extra hour this weekend because my mom's birthday? You know, like, so yes. In answer to your question, yes, lots of crossover.
So yeah, go ahead, Sheva, please.
Do you find that when you coach your clients to not lobby, that the return happens, that their ex, does it happen often where they notice a difference of like, oh wow, they didn't respond, and
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, sometimes it takes a while, like you said, it takes a while for them to notice that, like, wait, I don't have any more balls to throw because they get thrown back, right? So sometimes it does take a little, and you know what, sometimes not. And it actually doesn't matter, right? Because at least, you know, at least my clients can put their head on the pillow at night and feel really comfortable and confident in their behavior. Even if, you know, their ex is still, you know, throwing stuff at them. And sometimes it really does, like it just, it dissipates everything. I have a client who recently, you know, they were just sort of rushing into the divorce process and there was so much heat around it. And it was like, I'm finally moving out and I'm finally filing and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And he was getting more and more aggressive and it was getting more and more heated. And I finally said, how about we stop? How about you just stop? Let's we don't need to do all the filing and the lawyers and all the legal stuff. Like maybe we just need some time to let this settle and for you to, you know, for him to get his emotional, like he's not good at processing his emotions. So the way he's doing it is by like, you know, bringing in attorneys and getting aggressive. And I'll tell you what, as soon as she said, you know what, maybe we should take like some time and space, he was like totally transformed. And their entire process has been transformed because he's not feeling attacked. he's not, he, like you said, like he's acting out of so much fear, and he may not be emotionally intelligent enough to like get that and know where to put that. Right. So it's coming out as this aggressiveness. So yeah, for sure.
So you both have brought up communication, and I think it's one thing looking back on Nikki and my divorce. I don't want to play the old person in the room, but I think text messaging wasn't really a thing, and obviously email was. But we sat down, we talked, and gets so much can get lost in the text or the emails when you have a perception of somebody and you're reading it from looking for evidence to back up your theory. At least that's what I do when I read an email, right? Like if I have a theory that someone's a narcissist or, whatever, a brat or whatever it is, I'm going to be reading that email saying, oh, see, she is or he is. So what tips do you have for people to communicate either via email or text or on the phone?
Oh, I've got a few tips. Always lead with your feelings, what you're feeling. I am feeling blank. Feelings cannot be argued with. You cannot argue with how I'm feeling. But if I start with an accusation, then that can be argued with. And as soon as you accuse and you use to also avoid generalizations, as soon as you use generalizations, you always or you never, that's not true. Nobody always or never does anything. And so their defenses kick in and you've completely lost your high ground, even if you were in the right. So use I statements, talk about your feelings, avoid generalizations, and ask clearly for what you want. I feel this way when this happens. I would love if this could happen. And it doesn't hurt if you compliment the other person every once in a while. That can go a long way. You love them at one point. So they do have strengths that you can acknowledge.
Yeah. Gaia has a lot to say about this.
Yeah. He's communicating.
She is communicating.
Oh, sorry.
But I agree wholeheartedly with that. What I always say is to my clients is make sure that you're starting off with some kind of gratitude or an appreciation. Like even if it's like the smallest thing, like there was a period of time when my ex, and I think I've told the story before on the live stream, but my ex and I were having like parenting conflict, and he said to me, because of our years of therapy and 12-step work, he actually came to me and said, so here's the deal. If you're going to talk to me about my parenting, I need you to start off with telling me that I'm a great dad. Because as soon as you start saying anything about my parenting, I immediately think that I'm a terrible father. So if you could just start by saying you're a great dad, and it really helped him. And he's able to express that. He's emotionally intelligent enough to be able to ask for what he needs in that way. But I think that most people do respond to that, right? Most people do respond to, hey, I'm so grateful for the way that we're able to go through this and how we're communicating about this. And then yes, and I'm keeping everything in I language, but I'm having this feeling, I'm feeling a little conflicted about this, or I'm feeling kind of gross about this. How can we, or, making a request, right?
I love that. And I think I sometimes recommend to my clients to not, even if you don't feel comfortable, some people are not in a place yet to express gratitude to their ex directly, sure, but bank it. Notice the things that they're doing and even write it down. Have a list, because we have a tendency, like you said, Ben, to collect the negative. We look for the negative. We're actually programmed from caveman days to notice what's frightening and scary and hold on to the negative for survival. We have no need for positive memories. They do not serve us functionally. So we don't hold on to them. And that's why this whole gratitude movement is so big, because we are reprogramming. So I advise people to look for the moments you can be grateful for and write them down. My ex took my kids on a 3-week road trip this summer. And I was like, I am so thankful. They're not sitting in front of a TV. They're out camping. They're out in woods. They're out in nature. And we've had our ups and downs in dealing with everything nowadays. But I was just very, very, very thankful for that that he was able to do that and for the experience that he provided, and banking it, like storing it in my memory of gratitude there.
I love that idea. I'm gonna steal that. I'll credit you, but I'm totally stealing it because I love that. That's great.
That is great. So in the reparenting phase, or after the papers are signed and the divorce, the judgment's been awarded, I guess I believe, or at least for the most part, that somewhere there might be an invisible line crossed, and once a cucumber becomes a pickle, it can never become a cucumber again. And that's why I'm so fascinated by this process. But you've dealt with some. Have you dealt with some divorces after the divorce that is just War of the Roses, right? And been able to get it back on track? Or some just at that process too far gone, it's kind of a messed up question, but at least being able to teach that one person you've worked with to reparent and to refocus that they have no control over the other person and live a better life.
Because for that situation to be at that place, you really have to have two emotionally cut off, unaware individuals. And neither one of those would come see me a year or two after their divorce. Right. So it doesn't really fall into my lap so much. I could see that more happening to Kate, because when people are trying to decide when to stay or when to go, and then it can go in either direction. You can do it in a conscious, positive way, or it's a free for all.
And I have had, because I don't just do the should I stay or should I go, I also coach people through their divorces, right? So in the process, I have had people turn things around where, because exactly what we were talking about before, one person was being super aggressive and was sort of hell bent on making this nasty. And the wife in the situation was working with me was like, yeah, we're not doing that.
Right.
And eventually, he was like, what do you mean?
You need one to want it. So right. Imagine if they were both like him. It's very hard. And they wouldn't come. Neither of them would come seek coaching or therapy.
So I guess that was the question, right? So you said a couple years after your divorce, and so somebody comes and sees you, and is there motivation to get a better relationship with themselves, or to be happier, or do they then want to have a better relationship with their ex, or is it have anything to do with him or her, the other person?
So my focus is actually on the parenting side of it.
Okay.
And so the ex is usually a happy byproduct, because when you can put your kids first, when the focus is the best interest of your kids, that will affect the way that you co-parent. But I don't even advertise myself as the relationship between your ex and yourself. It's really about you understanding yourself, and then how to understand and relate to your kids. But that process has overflow to every single aspect of your life. It will help you at work. It will help you tremendously in your next relationship. I mean, if you don't do the work, it's not going to look good.
Nothing changes, nothing changes, right?
No, it does not. And I'm sure Kate can speak of that, right? Can speak to that of you were attracted to something originally, and chances are that hasn't changed. So how many times have you seen people get into relationships with exactly the same energy or type of dynamic all the time?
Yeah. And the divorce stats, I mean, we've talked about this a lot.
Right.
The stats for second and third marriages, divorces for second and third marriages just goes higher and higher and higher, because we're not doing that work. We're not figuring out what went wrong the first time, and we're like, oh, well, he was an asshole, and get a new one. And not looking at us and what we did and how we chose.
Yeah. And we're also not, it's interesting discussion in today's day and age, but I don't think we're being lonely enough. And it's interesting now because everybody's so lonely. It's this global epidemic of loneliness, but so many people are so scared of the experience of loneliness and being alone that they rush to fix that right away. And you jump into a relationship that's either a toxic relationship or it's in exactly the same pattern of your previous one. And loneliness is hard, but it's essential. You have to be lonely for a little bit. Got to.
No question. I went, worked with this guy through the process of now it was different. It was before we actually went through the process, but one of the things he made me do was go to the movies by myself. And you would think it'd not be a big deal, right? I don't think people out there might think, oh, what's the big deal about that? And I quite frankly didn't think it was a big deal until I got to the theater, right? And all of a sudden I started looking around. I didn't stop at the popcorn stand. I went straight to the movie, straight to my seat, and I had a hat on. My worst fear was running into somebody that I knew. And then I got it. I wasn't okay with being, alone. And then I look back and the whole over the years, and I'd always gone from relationship to relationship to relationship. So that was a big turning point, and committing to being alone for a little bit, which was hard.
I'm gonna steal that.
So going to the movies?
If movie theaters ever open up again, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right?
It sucked. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you what movie I saw, but it was awful.
I can tell you that when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was going through it was when I, was first dealing with my Al-Anon shit and whatever. And I was told to go to the movies by myself. And I went to the movies, and the very first movie I ever saw by myself was Seven.
Oh my God.
Oh. And then the second movie I ever saw by myself was Pulp Fiction.
Oh.
And I have never gone to the movies again by myself.
I saw Seven by myself, but in my house, like in my childhood home. My parents were out of town, I think, and I watched it on their bed watching Seven, and I don't know if I've recovered to this day.
Yeah, it's a rough one. I think I saw a kids movie. I think I saw like a cartoon, not like a Pixar movie.
Yeah, like Toy Story. Right? Yeah.
And I go the whole time I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, who's here? And it was terrible.
I have to say, Ben, it's not the smartest choice to go to a kids movie by yourself as a male. An unaccompanied male in a kids movie is highly suspicious.
Yeah. True story.
Especially sitting with your baseball cap.
Yeah, that might have been a little creepy looking back on it. Yeah. I thought I'd pick safe, and not only that, but looking back on it, like friends who had kids and all that, probably was a good place to run into them.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
The little things.
Maybe you had a subconscious desire to see somebody and really face it.
No, I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because the worst. Like I was just playing the whole thing through, like going to the theater. Like, okay, if you run into somebody and they say, "Who are you with?" Right? Like I was already playing the movie no pun intended, but playing the movie all the way through. Like, how was I going to answer that question? Who are you here with?
Yeah.
Because God forbid I say I'm alone.
By myself.
Yeah. Loser.
Came to see the Barbie movie all by myself.
So Sheva, how can people get in touch with you, reach out to you, and get some of that goodness?
Telegram.
Carrier.
I'm bringing it back.
I love it.
I accept also singing posts. What is singing telegrams? You'll have my attention right away. My website, so it's my name, shevagans.com. You'll have all my contact information there. My Instagram, which is @sheva.gans. I have a ton of content that I post. I post videos, minute to win it parenting videos. So it's a minute of, I know parents are strapped for time, so I like to do a quick 1 minute tip on how to be a more present parent. So just a lot of information there. So either through Instagram or Facebook or my website. It's all there.
She does have wonderful, now we're frozen. Perfect. Stuff on her Instagram. Your videos are great. And really insightful. And I love it because it's, especially for somebody, like little snippets.
Yeah,
quick and to the point.
I know what it's like, and I'm like, if there's an intro that's too long in a video, I'm done. I'm like, oh my God, get to the point.
Right. So, now, do you see people outside? You're in South Florida, but do you see people across the country, or?
Yeah. So for the coaching, I can see international, and everything is all telehealth. Even my therapy is telehealth these days. I do have some courses opening up soon, a ReParenting course. That is a great way to understand some of the dynamics of how your childhood affected your decisions and what your needs are, knowing how to meet your needs and how to address your children's needs. That's opening up. So, and that's all on my website, more information about that.
That is great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been just like our conversation. It's just been amazing because there's so many nuggets in there, and it's. I guess the theme is it's never too late. You know, I mean, it's never too late.
I know you're closing, but I just want to speak to that because I feel like a lot of people, and that's part of why I work with that demographic, is that a lot of people feel like, oh, the divorce is over and life is just getting back to normal. And there's always an opportunity. There's always things that you can reflect on. I am still a work in progress. It's a never ending process. So it is never too late. And there's always something to look at and address or reframe, or there's always stuff to do. So thank you for calling out, and thank you for having me. This is such an honor, and
it was a blast, and we appreciate you taking your time. You did bring up narcissists, and we are going to be tackling that topic next week, and not for clickbait. We are not going to be talking about it for clickbait. We're going to be trying to get to the bottom of what, the difference between the clinical definition and the colloquial definition. And sometimes he's just an asshole. And that doesn't mean he's a narcissist.
I can't argue with that. Sometimes he's a hurt little boy and he does not know how to process his emotions, and he did not get that need met in the relationship with you. Right. So he does not know how to interact with you other than that coping skill of asshole narcissism. But if that's my soapbox. If
no, that's great. What my position is. That's great. And we'll have Michelle Dempsey on next week, who's phenomenal and really is in touch with that, and also has sort of an issue with the word, right? I mean, I think it gets thrown around just a little too easily. But Kate, thank you. And look, I kept it under an hour, as promised. But thank you guys very much, and have a great night. Everybody stay safe out there.
Good night.